Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Hometown TCG. You already know who I am. My name is Josh, and we are back. We are talking the competitive circuit with the Road to Nationals, the Callings, and we are talking those players who might feel a little bit of anxiety or uncertainty when it comes to jumping into these competitive games. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take all of our classic constructed heroes, we're going to kind of break them down, and we're going to categorize them by how quickly newer to competitive players can pick up, build these decks, play in these events, and get some wins. But before we get started, I kind of got a surprise for you guys today. We got a sick care package, courtesy of Legend Story Studios. Guys, we have tons of copies of Full Art Foil, Herald of Protection, and the coup de grace. We have this absolutely bonkers Herald of Protection playmat. And the kicker is, we're giving all of this stuff away to you guys. If you are subscribed to youtube.com/HometownTCG, if you are a Hometown TCG patron, you have opportunities to win all of this swag. So make sure you're subbed, follow our future videos, and we're going to be giving all this stuff away to you guys. And one last big thank you to LSS for the awesome care package to help out our community. This company is great. This game is great, guys. We are having a blast and love hanging out with you. So let's get into today's topic, guys. We want these players that are on the sideline to feel comfortable. We want them to be able to pick up and build these decks and join us in these more competitive games and more competitive formats. So we're going to break down every single classic constructed hero, and we're going to start with Viscera. But before we get into it, let's talk about what our tiers are. Our first tier, meaning the easiest to just pick up the deck and play and get some wins, is called Stack Dubs Easy Peasy. The next hardest is going to be a Casual Player's Paradise. Following that, we're going to need a little bit of dedication. After that, you're going to have to ask yourself, am I ready for this commitment? And finally, decks that require a finite degree in mathematics to pick up and play and get wins. Now mind you, don't be too intimidated. All of these decks with practice can go and get wins at all of these competitive events. So let's start with that old school Runeblade. Let's talk Viscera. And Viscera falls in the tier of, am I ready for this commitment? Guys, Viscera plays kind of one of two ways. You got this weird mid-rangey back foot, front foot Viscera, or I guess more popular in Blitz is the OTK Viscera. So these gigantic 40 damage turns, 36 to 40 damage turns. And both of these things require a good amount of knowledge to set up and a good amount of knowledge to know when to go off. That's what pushes Viscera into the am I ready for this commitment tier. Couple that with the fact that there's not a ton of content out there for Viscera or how to play him, it can make the deck a little more troublesome for newer players. So you're going to have to put in a little bit of time and a little bit of effort. But guys, once you do, that deck feels rewarding. It's a blast to play. If you haven't given it a try Viscera soon. Moving on, we have Bolton. And Bolton is fairly straightforward. However, he is gonna need some dedication. Much like Viscera, he's got very common and popular lines of play, whether it's double Luminous Ascension via the Vanguard into some big attacks. Knowing when to go off and knowing when to try to keep your health high is a valuable tool, and that's gonna require a little bit of dedication. So Bolton falls into, I'm going to need some dedication. But guys, once you put that dedication in, he's a very explosive deck. He can just pop off and kill almost any other deck in the format like that. It can get absolutely insane. Moving on, we got everyone's favorite, the buffest, the baddest, Gaston. We got Bravo, and Bravo falls into Stack Dubs Easy Peasy. Once you understand Bravo, guys, keep your health high, really efficient swings with hammer, whether it's 4 or 6, and do I have a crush effect that I can afford to play? Bravo becomes pretty simple. Now, that doesn't mean there's not finer things that you can learn. When to go off, when not to go off, when to use armor. There's a lot of tricks you can learn once you get really, really good with Bravo. But as far as picking the deck up, just kind of shuffling and getting ready to play, I think it's one of the easiest decks. And guys, who doesn't love giant crippling crushes? Who doesn't love pummel effects? And who doesn't love swinging that hammer? We got Bravo in stack dubs, easy peasy. Next, we have one of the menaces of the current format, a very popular deck. We have Chain. And while Chain is very popular, he falls into requires a degree in finite mathematics to play. Most of this is because there's a ton of anti-chain tech out there that you as a chain player have to be ready for. So while our new players can pick up this card or pick up this deck and kind of see lines of play, they might not see the absolute most efficient line of play, which is often required, and they might not know certain tricks like when to leave stuff in the banish zone, when to go off, when to use those resources, when to hold them. Stuff like that is a ton of questions you have to ask on chain, all while managing your own life total, your own blocking situation. It can get absolutely insane. I feel like I need the meme with all the math going over my head right now. But once you figure that out, it's a very rewarding deck to play. It can be a ton of fun. And finally, the last challenge in Chain is a lot of your plays are face up on the table, which means your opponent can often see them coming. You have to develop the skill to kind of conceal some of those plays and hide things to really push yourself over the top. Chain's going to require a degree in finite mathematics if you're going to pick up the deck and play at these events. But as we've seen in a lot of these Road to Nationals, once you get that degree, it can be rewarding. Chain is winning some games. Players are having a lot of fun. I recommend putting in the time. He's a great deck. Okay, moving on. We have Dash, our mechanologist out of Arc. And this is the first character that falls into the casual player's paradise. Now guys, we know there are two ways to play Dash. You can play absolute boost Dash, going off the top. How much damage can I do in a turn? Can I smash these max velocities? Boost Dash is fairly straightforward. You boost every turn if you can, and you try to hit big attacks. And then there's Control Dash. And Control Dash is kind of what takes us out of stacked dubs easy peasy, right? Because while Control Dash at its core is very much, you know, block with 2 or 3 cards, shoot my pistol a bunch, there are some tools in the deck that you need to know. You need to know what equipment to start with, you need to know what to get out second, which situations certain defense reactions in the arsenal are held and they're worth it, things like that. And also the attack reaction interaction with all of the equipment and the pistol can be a bit confusing, so that pushes Dash out of the stacked dubs easy peasy tier and puts her into the casual player's paradise. But Dash builds are doing great at the Road to Nationals right now. Players are having a lot of fun. There's a lot of variance in these builds. We're loving seeing Dash. So if you're looking for a kind of an easier deck to pick up, Dash is recommended, and you guys are going to have a blast. All right, moving on to my first deck. And you guys are about to see why it was my first deck, because Dorinthia falls into stacked dubs easy peasy. We consider Dorinthia to be one of those almost solo player decks, especially at the lower levels of competition. It's very much, do you have it or don't you have it? And this doesn't mean, just like Bravo, there's not more finite points while playing Dorinthia. When to block, when to hold resources, when to go over the top, when to try to give up that Dawnblade counter. All of these decision points, yes, require a large amount of skill, and good Dorinthia players will really set themselves apart from newer ones. However, if the purpose is to get these new players off the sidelines and into games, they can pick up a Dorinthia deck and understand how it works very quickly. The only weird interaction that almost pushed Dorinthia into the casual player's paradise is the interaction with the fact that you have to have Go Again, and the Dawnblade has to hit to trigger her power to be able to attack again. It's kind of a weird interaction for newer players, but once you have that down, it's very face up. You understand, can I get over the top or can I not? Dorinthia is a great deck for newer players, and she's really strong right now. So if you're looking for something to build, especially with the release of Crew Unlimited, pick up some Dorinthia stuff, guys. She's a blast. Try her out. Now moving on to Azalea. And I know you guys are seeing this Azalea build that's going out. I got a chance to experience it firsthand. I saw it at the Road to Nationals. It is a great build piloted by a fantastic player. However, Azalea is going to require a degree in finite mathematics to get these wins. Guys, this build is great. Azalea can be very strong, and she can do a lot of things that are detrimental to the top champions in the meta right now. The problem is, these good Azalea players that are stacking wins have played these matchups so many times. They have put in the work. They have hammered these games. They have the sideboarding, the play lines, the patterns, the paths to victory down to a science. And if they miss on those, they will end up losing games. Now, they got to where they are by not missing on those. They make the right play. They're very, very well-versed and well-tuned players, and this deck can be piloted to wins, but you must put in the work. This is one of the harder decks to play in the format if you want to play it to success, so Azalea is going to require that degree. However, I got to admit, after seeing the deck myself, I'm building it right now because it looks like a blast to play. So many decision points, so much going on, so many cool interactions. I think it's worth the run, but be ready for the work, put in the work, and be ready to study that degree because you're going to need it if you want to play that Azalea build. Moving on, we got Kano, and Kano slots right down in the same spot as Azalea, and this is because a lot of Kano's strategy is to pitch things in a certain order and let them come back around to try to go off for a big one-turn kill. Guys, everyone knows Kano starts behind the ball with a lower life total, and he's very easy to block if your opponent swaps out all their equipment for Null Rune. In that scenario, it's hard for Kano to push through any consistent damage, which means they must use a lot of those card resources to block. When you use those to block and you already aren't pushing through a lot of damage, you're going to very much be on the back foot. To win with Kano, you're going to have to keep your health as high as possible, wait for the whole deck to come around, and find things that you pitched in the correct order so you can go for that big turn, the big 2 turns in a row, and try to OTK or 2-turn kill your opponent. To pilot Kano successfully, especially in Classic Instructed, you're going to need a degree in finite mathematics, but it's going to be worth it because who doesn't like casting giant fireballs and lightning just to light up your opponents? So the newer players out there, if you're wanting to play Kano, know it's a very difficult deck, but it's going to feel cool once you master that play pattern. Okay, moving on, we have Katsu, and there's a ton of different Katsu. There's Turtle Katsu, there's mid-range Katsu, there's aggro Katsu, but overall, Katsu's gonna fall into the am I ready for this commitment build. The only exception here is a deck that's not super popular in the US meta, and that is Full Control or Turtle Katsu, playing all of the defense reactions, just sitting back on the back foot, and then pinging with Kodachis, trying to chip health low and going for a big turn to end the game. Now that doesn't mean, again, that deck requires a ton of skill and discipline to pilot. But base Katsu, knowing when to pitch cards from your hand, knowing when to go for your big combos, knowing when Lord of Wind is viable, things like that of that nature are so important on Katsu, you're gonna have to put in the work. He's not as difficult as a Chain or as an Azalea or even a Kano, but guys, if you don't put in the work, you're gonna draw up a hand with a Katsu, you're gonna wonder, oh, what do I do with all this? I've done it myself. The deck takes a lot of practice, but again, like all the decks on the bottom half of this list, and not bottom half is in bad, but bottom half is in the more difficult decks, feel rewarding. Once you learn it, and once you get it right, and you start to see the pieces of that puzzle come together, and they can be just absolutely fun decks to play. All right, we got a crowd favorite coming up next. We got Levia, and Levia falls in the gonna need some dedication tier. And the reason for this is Levia she's strong. All these decks can get wins, right? We've learned this as the RTNs have come on. All of these decks can top 8, they can all get wins. However, Levia is not as strong as some of the top tier decks. So much like Azalea, it requires a great amount of discipline to know your lines of play, to stick to your plan, to know how you beat certain matchups, and that's going to require a lot of practice. And while she's a little bit easier than the other decks mentioned in that tier below, she still requires all of that practice, and most importantly, discipline, knowing when you can start turning on the engine, knowing when you can banish cards, knowing when Doomsday is good, knowing when Doomsday is not good. All of these decision points in Levia are extremely important, and that means to play Levia, you're going to need some dedication. So I know a lot of you out there are excited to play her. Just dedicate, figure the deck out, figure out your play patterns, and you will have a blast. Moving on, we got Prism. Now, Prism is another one that's got a couple builds, and this is going to feel like a weird one, but just like every other deck, just because Prism's a casual player's paradise doesn't mean that our great Prism players don't make plays that are above and beyond that most people won't see. But for your average player, coming off the sidelines, getting into the game, Prism is a casual player's paradise. It's very straightforward. You got big attacks, you got pummels, you got hit effects. What's keeping her out of stack dubs easy peasy is the use of soul shields and specters and knowing when they're useful, knowing when they're not, knowing when you should use the resource to drop them, etc. All of these decision points kind of keep Prism down a tier, but she is so fun to play. Hitting a big Herald into a Tome of Divinity, drawing all these cards, constantly swinging, pinging with your shields. All of these interactions are a blast, especially for players new to the meta, and they can all be pulled off with relative ease. Now, your good Prism players are gonna know, when can I afford to do this? When do I have to sit back and block a little bit? When? These decision points are gonna separate those newer players from the good Prism players. However, if you get into this deck and you start playing, you will learn these strategies, you will learn these decision points, and you will love Prism. She's an absolute blast to play, and I think at this point, she's a community favorite. And finally, we got John Wood coming back this weekend to shoot some more content from his high rise in Hollywood, so we had to save his hero for last. We're talking Rhinar, and we want to put Rhinar where he belongs almost all the time, which is always right in the middle of everything. Guys, Rhinar's going to require a little bit of dedication, and just like Levia, a lot of that dedication is surrounded around discipline. When to block, when to keep your health totals high, and when to use those valuable and explosive resources that you have at your disposal. So all of these decision points means you can't just pick up Rhinar and automatically easy peasy without any knowledge go in and win some games. You're gonna need some practice. You're gonna have to know when these decision points come around, and just like Levia, because he's in such a fragile state where he can win games, but he has to do almost everything right, this means it's going to require a ton of practice. It's going to require a very clean line of play from you, the player, to get Rhinar across the finish line. So guys, this is our tier list, and I really hope that this just takes some people that are maybe on the fence. Oh, I don't know if I can play CC competitive. I don't know if I want to. I don't know what I want to play. Guys, this should just open you up to the opportunity, and if you want a challenge, build some of these harder decks. If you just want to dip your toe in the water and get to some events, build some of these easier decks. Visit us at patreon.com, join our Patreon, and jump in our Discord. Rip off some of our deck lists and get into the game, guys. Let me know what you think about this list in the comments below. And one last time, a champion's or hero's position on this list does not mean that they're just easy to play and the players who play them don't know what they're doing. No, the good players on all of these heroes are going to go above and beyond and make just calculated and sick lines of play on these heroes that are going to win them games. This is just a list, a tier list for your newer players or players on the fence that really want to get into this classic constructed competitive gameplay. So guys, thank you so much for hanging out. I have had an absolute blast making this video with you guys. Again, let me know what you think about the list in the comments below. Hang out with us, make sure you're subbed, come around, win some of these amazing prizes from LSS. Thank you again, LSS, for everything. I'm just so absolutely hyped right now. Until next time, you know my name, and we'll see you around, guys. Goodbye.